Hello and welcome to the Residents of Evil podcast. Today we are joined by very special guest Vincent Corazza, who is the voice actor for Carlos in Resident Evil 3. He's also the voice of Tuxedo Mask in Sailor Moon. This is a two-part podcast. In this part we discuss his role as Carlos, and if you guys are interested in hearing our discussion with Vince about his role as Tuxedo Mask in Sailor Moon, you can check that out on our secondary channel, Beyond the Fandom. I'll link that down below. Before we begin, I would just like to let everybody know that the ROE podcast is available on iTunes and also on Android services like Castbox and Libsyn. Alright, with that being said, let's start the show.
Okay, so let's jump into Resident Evil 3. First of all, I just got to know, how did you get the part for Carlos?
Just an audition.
Just an audition.
Just an audition. It was, my agents. God, that's a long time ago too. Yeah. But I just remember my agent saying, "Hey, there's this video game, Resident Evil. This is what they're looking for. Can you lay down an audition?" I was like, "Sure." And then you read the specs and you kind of go, "Okay, I think this is what I hear in my head of this guy sounding like," and they liked it.
Well, it was still a new game. It was only two had come out. They were coming out in quick succession. So I don't know. I mean, had you even heard of Resident Evil before that audition came across to you?
I had because I remember the first two, auditioning and a couple of people that I knew who had worked on it.
Okay.
But and at the time, you know what? I can't even remember who those people were now. But
so I've had you're up there in Canada. I mean, most of the cast was from that area. So I mean, you had Paul Haddad and Alison Cord. So
yeah, as far as I know, the entire cast was all Torontonians, Canadians. Right. But I just don't remember specifically who it was.
Who it was?
It's a long time ago.
So. I'd heard of it. I've never have been and never was a big, massive video game player. I like arcade games, but not, I'm not a big at-home video game guy. So I'd heard of it, but knew nothing other than that. And then that just knew that it was a video game, and hey, man, it's a job.
Yeah, so, at that point, it's work, right?
Right.
So you got the sheet, basically the explanation of who the character was, and did they specifically say we want him to have an accent?
Yeah.
And did they coach you along when you were in there doing the audition, or is it just something you came in with?
No, it's something I came in with. Yeah. Just remember them saying, too, they wanted it to be a slight accent. They didn't want it to be super heavy. They wanted it to, just have a tiny bit of an accent, almost like he might have been born and, and raised, in Mexico, but moved to America when he was like, say, 6 or 7, you know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Okay.
And I don't even remember if that's specifically what was said. I just remember once I finally got that, I did the audition. That's what I gave them. They liked it. And then them sort of that at the first session, I remember them saying something along those lines of like, keep it slight, because they didn't want it to be, distracting or right. You know what I mean? And also, which I appreciated too. I think they didn't want it to become offensive or caricature. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Which would be terrible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I can definitely say that from playing the game religiously all these years and stuff, that it was a character that came out right. Like it wouldn't be, I don't think, like an offensive stereotype or anything. I think a lot of the characters that were in 3 were pretty. I mean, because there were a lot of others doing
diversity.
Accents.
It was actually diversity in the cast for the change.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's. I remember them saying too. And this is you're going back. God, like this is how long ago too. When did that?
Years ago?
Almost 20 years for Resident Evil 3. Yeah. I think Resident Evil 3 turns 20 next year.
Yeah.
Right. So remember, video games back then having like a cinematic feel to it was super new. You know what I mean? Like, around for a little while. And I remember that was one of their biggest things was they wanted it to feel real, to feel raw, to give the experience of, so that when people were playing along and these cutscenes would happen, that they wouldn't just want to skip over it. They'd want to watch it because it was almost like it was cinematic. It almost made them feel like it gave you depth, so that then when you're playing the game, you were really experiencing, you just deepen the reality of the actual game experience.
Yeah.
You know, so I remember that was part of it too, and that's why they didn't want it to be extreme, so that it didn't become distracting. It didn't become something that, you know, that people focused on. They wanted it to just sort of feel like, oh, this guy clearly wasn't born and raised in America. You know what I mean? There's some nuance to him that's interesting.
I think what was nice about 3 is the only real difference in character we had at this point was Ada Wong, who didn't really have much of an accent, and she was an Asian character. But when we got to 3, we've got, you know, the Watchdogs, which was like Nikolai and the Umbrella, you know, special forces with Nikolai and Carlos and everybody. So we had a variation actually come through. They weren't just cardboard people anymore. They weren't just one dimensional. Right. They had accents. You knew these people had a background from somewhere else.
Right. Well, it also opens, you know, the game itself to a more global feel, right? It doesn't suddenly become like, oh, of course, okay, we're doing something else that's just America. You know what I mean? It's all about, you know, like, it has this feeling of like, oh, wow, right, this would affect. So something like this happening, let's say Resident Evil actually became a real, you know, it happened to us, zombies, all these things, right? You'd go, right, it would affect the whole world. So it would affect everybody. And that gives you that feeling without making it all of a sudden become about the whole world. You just have different people who are here that also are from other parts of the world.
Yeah, it's a good way of looking at it.
Also
actually
shows Umbrella's reach, because Umbrella is a world conglomerate.
Exactly.
So
exactly, it gives you nuance. It just it helps. You know, as in anything, you know, the detail is what always makes something much more interesting, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And that's a good way of putting it, because Resident Evil 3, it's from its, you know, it's writing, it's acting, and everything else in the thing. It's a really well detailed game. A lot of people love the second one more. But personally, for me, 3 was my favorite because I got Jill Valentine back, and she's like my favorite character. But the character of Carlos was really interesting because he continues being a character that is a secondary character that's in the game, and I feel he's filling a role that's been done in the other 2 games, and he was really good when you got to play as him too, because he was like, you know, he didn't have much ammo, and his mission when I was a kid, because I was like 9 when that game came out. His part in the hospital was tough because there was a lot of puzzles and like things that could like one hit kill you.
Yeah.
So, you know, it really brought something more because you got to play as a secondary character that had more. There was more danger for this character because when you play as Ada or Sherry in the second one, it's for like a short 5 minutes, and in the other one, you play as Rebecca in the first game, and there's not too much she has to deal with really. It's just she can kind of get through the game pretty quick by herself. But Carlos is like, he's in a city by himself, and he's got like, you know, the machine gun and a handgun with only like limited ammo. So for me, I was just like, man, this character is great. He is kicking all kinds of ass in front, and he was the first one to go against the Nemesis after it had mutated. I mean, you didn't have to fight him because that was suicide, but that was really an incredible scene when that guy just busts through the wall like the Kool-Aid guy. And you're just like, oh, hey, it's Dr. Dick Hands. I'm running from this. Dr. Dick Hands comes from because Nemesis was in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and the fighting game fans named him Dr. Dick Hands because his tentacles come out. He's like what you call, he controls space. So like he keeps people at bay with the tentacles and stuff because he's got reach on him and stuff. So the fans are great with that because like I play the character a lot in Marvel, so it's just like, oh, this is great. This is great. This character's awesome.
Right.
I'm wondering, can you still do the accent?
I mean, I can kind of remember. I remember whenever I go to cons, people always ask me that. So I remember that. What's my line is, name's Carlos. Glad to meet you, lady.
Perfect.
Meet you, lady. What's that other line that I go, stars? Wow, you know, or something.
Oh yeah, there was that one. Then what was it? Jill's asking him a question. He goes, I was like, oh yeah, you want to ask me out? All the foxy ladies dig the accent.
Yeah, all the foxy ladies dig my accent. I feel like I have a slightly deeper timbre now because I'm 20 years older, but I can still do them. I mean, if somebody played me a sample, I'd be able to, you know, do it bang on. Because I know this is going to sound crazy, but it's me that actually did it. So,
I mean, you were the guy who did the voice, so
yeah.
It's funny how
sort of take myself.
Yeah, so. How much flavor he brought, you know, just because again, this is a serious situation, and we had all these people that are kind of one dimensional. They're heroes, you know, and then you got the bad guy. Carlos came in, and he's flirting, and he's, you know, She has the accent, so he just brings a different aspect to the whole game, which was nice.
Yeah, it was a fun. I remember when we were recording, it was fun to kind of play too, because here you are in this crazy game, you know, and it's the first time I'd ever done anything like that, where it's also super violent, like super, you know, and I didn't get to see any visuals or see any part of the game until like late in the recording session. I remember one day one of the producers brought in some actual footage that they were, you know, they had just completed, so that we could actually see some of it. And other people had seen stuff too who had worked on the earlier games, but that was the first time I saw anything. And I just remember being like, wow, this is intense.
Yeah.
You know, for 20 years ago, I had never seen anything like that. Like I said, for a kid who grew up on playing Ms. Pac-Man and Space Invaders, and, you know, and pool and pinball and stuff like that. I mean, see a game like that where you go, wow, this is cinematic.
Yeah,
this is
cinematic.
Like,
it's like a whole new ball game and stuff. And you know, and 3, I think, you know, a lot of people are like, you know, oh, well, 2 did a lot too. It's like, yeah, well, 3 had a lot to it too. Like there was a lot more emotion at times for a lot of things that was happening in my personal opinion. Like, I mean, I love 2 and 3, but 3, it's just, you know, the acting was kind of almost, I want to say in a way perfected, because in the original one, it was supposed to be cheesy and it worked. And the second one, they took it a little bit more serious, but they still had more fun with it. You know, and then 3 comes along and the seriousness is like, hey, a whole city's infected. So we gotta kind of, it's kind of like what Marvel just did in their newest movie. No spoilers or anything, but they took, you know, being able to be very serious while adding comedy and mixing it well. And I think that Resident Evil 3 had done that well, because you guys, you know, all the actors involved in it played very well. So that was an interesting thing I always noticed with Resident Evil 3.
Yeah, and I also love. I mean, I will say I love the fact that I got to be Carlos too for that reason. In that particular game, I was an ass kicking guy that had this agenda and had this storyline, but then also I had a swagger. I got to he had this. he was this guy that still even when the heat was on, he had a clever line, or he had like a reaction that made you go, okay, he's taking it seriously. He knows when he's got to step up. But at the same time, he has that ability to kind of shake off what was happening around him and make some funny comment, or or still be this like guy that was like, like that's still like, hey, but I'm still going to try and hit on Jill. You know what I mean?
And the thing of it is, you're spot on with that, because there was a lot of scenes in that that were really serious. Like Jill gets ganged up by a bunch of zombies in like the underground plant area. He comes in, he's like, he's saying like, taking care of you is becoming a full-time job and all that stuff. And I mean, oh yeah, it was great. Like, and it was stuff like that. It's just like, man, this is a guy, clearly he's a mercenary. He's seen some stuff, but even in a world where like in a city controlled, like infected by zombies and biohazard weapons, he still has time to make jokes. And again, that's what I really think he brought to the table with this, was a character that just stayed optimistic, even though there was a point in the game, depending how, because there's 2 different ways the game can end and go during certain things. Like he gets kind of dark for a minute, and Jill actually bitch slaps him across the face to snap him back to reality. But yeah, no, like that was a good thing. Like it was a character that when he was on screen, he owned the role. Like you owned the role, you took control, you stole the show type deal. Jill's supposed to be the hero, and the side guy comes in, and he goes, "This guy's awesome. They did a great job, and you did too."
And
I appreciate that.
He got the game.
It was much more 3-dimensional than the average average stuff that you got to do back then. You know what I mean? Where he had layers to him, which was fun.
And he got the part. Resident Evil 3 was his big game that was his part of. We haven't seen him since, but he also was in the movies. I don't know. Have you watched the Resident Evil movies? Any of them?
I haven't seen him. I've always wanted to. My wife's not a huge fan of that kind of stuff. Okay. Here's the thing. She loves thrillers. You know what I mean? But that kind of like shoot 'em up kind of, just that kind of general stuff is not that she's a big fan of. So I always, every so often though, I'll be flipping through channels and I'll see like it's on, and I'll be like, I should watch it. I got to watch it someday. And I just never got around to it. Right. And I mean, it turned into a massive franchise. Like just huge. How many movies?
Six or seven, I believe.
Yeah. And I'm just saying, you're not missing anything, because most Resident Evil fans of the games and stuff are not fans of the movies. That's a completely different fan base. So
yeah. I mean, I've run into that at every convention I've gone to, or anytime I've done interviews about it. Everybody,
yeah.
We've
talked about it. My wife is from Thailand, and she says, and this is something we kind of came to the realization when she was explaining it to me. It's not as big here in the States, but it is huge in Asia, because it brings the action orient that they're used to, which is, the over the top action that Asia is known for, and the gore and the scariness to it. So it sells great out there. Not as big here, but they're the ones that are pretty much pushing the market for it.
Right.
My thing is, Carlos actually got two movies where he was in. He's got the Resident Evil 3 timeline in the second movie where it's in Raccoon City, and then he actually comes back for another movie, and they give him a send-off, which wraps up his character. Played, in my opinion, one of the few actors that really played a part well. Oded Fair played Carlos in the movies. He did a great job, and it was written well, which was nice. But
sorry, Ali, but like I was saying, because you have Oded Fair who played him. Did you ever see the original Mummy with Brendan Fraser?
Yeah, I saw the first one.
He was the Magi character that helped him.
The one with the long hair?
Oded. He was also in Deuce Bigelow. So you know who Oded is. Yeah.
No, I know who he is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's who played Carlos in the Resident Evil movies.
Yep.
Yeah, and he did a great job. I was just wondering your take on this, but you haven't seen the movie, so I guess it doesn't really matter.
Sorry, not going to be able to help you out there.
But he did actually come back in the game series, not in a new game, but he was a game that was rebooted as a different concept. It became a rail shooter. It was called Umbrella Chronicles, and it did have a part where it covered some of the events of Resident Evil 3, and Carlos came back to it. But it was voiced by somebody else. I was wondering, did they ask you to come back for that, or they just bypass you on it?
No, they did.
Okay. So you were contacted at least. They did.
Yeah, this is one of those moments you look back on a career and you always go, what was I thinking back then? Yeah. But I know exactly what I was thinking. I just finished recording Resident Evil 3. We had just finished the game, and shortly after that, I want to say within a few months of the recording, I don't even think the game had come out yet, or maybe it had. The Columbine.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Shooting happened. And I remember one morning watching, when Columbine happened. I mean, it was just such a shocking thing. And sadly, we've done nothing since to change our ways. But anyways, regardless of that, I remember watching a news program one morning, and they had this expert sharpshooter who worked for the U.S. military, and he was the guy that trained the snipers. So he was in charge of training all the snipers in the U.S. military, the expert snipers, the top of the line. The guys that went out on special force missions and stuff like that, and who were positioned in certain places to basically give cover to their teams as they went in and things like that.
Right.
And basically during his report, he said he basically accused video games at the time of contributing to the ability, not saying, and I want to be careful what I say here, not saying that he was blaming video games for causing things like Columbine, but what he was saying was that at the time, and this is back then, I don't subscribe to this at all anymore, but back then he was saying that when Columbine happened, how do kids train to do something like this? When Columbine happened, the kids that did this, they had a pistol, right? And 6 shots and killed 5 people.
Yeah.
I mean, and the sharpshooter, the sniper commander who trained people basically said, I could take my top sniper of all time, the best sniper that I've ever trained in my entire career. If I gave him a pistol, told him to walk up to a school and then unload and kill, and from the exact same distance of where this happened, he said, I can guarantee you that he might hit 50% at best.
Yeah.
And he said, and I can't even guarantee that every shot would be a kill shot. He said, because I don't train snipers to kill innocent people. We train them to kill enemies, and he said, and so you can never desensitize the human being from the moment. Yeah. And I don't want to go on about it, but basically I saw that. It really affected me. It kind of upset me, and it made me. At the time, I didn't really know how I felt about that, because as an artist, I never felt like art should ever be censored or condemned for any reason.
Right.
I didn't feel like the video game should stop being made, but at the moment, it literally happened right at that particular moment, and in that time, I just didn't know how I felt. I was sort of like really overwhelmed by it, and so I just was like, I just don't know if I want to participate, if I want to be involved in stuff like that I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure. Is it contributing? Isn't it? I don't know. I didn't know where I stood on it. And right when that happened, they ended up asking me if I would come back. And I sort of just said, no, I think I'm going to pass, because I just don't feel right about this. Now I feel completely, it was a giant mistake. I should have done it. I mean, I just don't think that, I still believe that it's possible that, sure, mentally challenged people who are mentally unstable, who are already, messed up. Sure, they could use video games to train themselves to do horrible things,
right.
But you can't blame the video game. It's not the video game. You can't condemn millions of people who play video games just for fun and suddenly say, well, none of us can play, none of us can do that anymore because of the few crazy people out there who might use video games to practice their skills to kill people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in retrospect, but I didn't know that at the time. So
right.
Going back 20 years ago, I didn't understand it at the time. And so that's the reason why I passed, and I deeply regret it. But I will say the one thing that I can't say happy, but one thing that I think positive that came out of that experience is it made me as an artist really try to ask myself those questions early, to say to myself, okay, what does that mean? What are the kinds of things? What do I have an issue with? And and how do I feel about censorship? And do I feel like I should ever think in those ways? And I have to say, I don't believe that. And it's because of that experience. I believe that we should be allowed to tell stories. We need to explore those kinds of things. We need to have those conversations. We need to be able to create things that challenge us, and then say, okay, did we maybe go too far? But we can't condemn ourselves for those things. Society has to evolve, and the only way we can evolve is to challenge ourselves. And it goes back to my earlier thing that we were talking about, how artists lead. Well, it's writers, producers, directors, actors, musicians, painters. It's the artists who they see a bridge, and they go, how do I cross that bridge?
Yeah.
How do we get to the other side? And the only way you can do that is you have to make mistakes. You have to challenge things and sort of go, I'm not exactly sure what I'm doing here. And then we suddenly go, ooh, that didn't work so well. But doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means that we now adjust. You know what I mean? And so I deeply regret making that choice. I was a mid-20s kid, who didn't know what he was doing. And I just remember being super, super, super affected by that Columbine incident, and not knowing how I felt about it at the time. And so I just was like, I don't think I want to participate. And
I think you had a fair reason to, because as an actor, you're affected by these things, and you went at it. See, the thing is, you went at it at a way that that everybody should respect. You looked at it from this angle, you looked at it from that angle, you're looking at it at all points of view, and you made your mind up for what, like what me and Jeff will tell you, we'll believe, because, I've been trained to use firearms as well. And, I've watched a lot of people over the years destroy themselves. I've watched friends come from broken homes and all these things. I come from a broken home myself. My father did the best he could, but my mother had a lot of issues of drugs and alcohol and everything. And the therapists that I had to go see were always telling my father, oh, he's gonna not respect women when he grows up. He's gonna have drugs and alcohol issues. And to this day, I never touched a drop of alcohol, never smoked, nothing like that. And my girlfriend, I both respect and fear her, because if you don't fear the one you love, then there's no chance for a relationship. You gotta wake up one day and realize, man, I get to look at this beautiful woman every day, and oh God, I hope she's not holding a knife, because she's so beautiful. It's that thing.
I like to think of what you originally said is respect.
Well, yeah, no, my girlfriend knows.
I know you just.
But that's the thing. It's just you see what happens out there. You see how people can evolve from certain things, and things can be influenced. and everything. But like you said, blaming the games and stuff, blaming a lot of other things, like, like certain movies and stuff. It's also on how you're raised, because my sister is also a teacher, and I have another close friend of mine who's been a teacher for 13 years, and they'll both tell you, like, the kids and the way they act these days, it's not because of the games or anything. It's because at home there's no discipline. And that's kind of the bigger thing that I've always felt, that, like, when they make arguments about video games, I mean, because as for me, video games were an escape as a kid. Sure, like, I played Doom, and I played all the Resident Evil. I started playing Resident Evil at like 7 years old. And I played Halo growing up as well. And like I said, all the Mortal Kombats as they all came out, and it didn't affect me. My dad, he made sure, because like he's a retired police officer, so he made sure that, and he's former military, so he made sure that I was taken care of. I knew what was real. He gave me things that he knew that I knew wouldn't affect me. He's like, this is a video game. You don't ever replicate what you see in these games at all, because it can hurt somebody. Yeah. What's happening in the game.
I think everything you're saying, is accurate. But I also think too, again, one of the biggest things that we keep. There's just nothing. I mean, there's things that we can do about it. We have to work towards it. But
bingo, yeah.
You weren't a mentally unstable child. You weren't. So you had the ability to play something and differentiate between reality and game, and reality and just having fun, and that's
oh yeah,
just you know what I mean. And so I think certainly it's impossible not to say that there's no contributing fact. I think everything, the world around us, always contributes to the tragic things that happen, but you can't suddenly condemn and blame art or things like that, and then just suddenly write it off and say, okay, we're done with that. We're not going to allow that because of X, Y, and Z. That doesn't make sense. You have to challenge it. You have to say, well, why? What is it? What element of that is making this happen, or whatever? And then say, okay, you can't punish everybody for what one crazy person does. You know what I mean?
Exactly. That's like literally the best way to do it. Instead of looking for the scapegoat, and video games are usually the first ones to go towards
games
it.
And movies.
Yeah, like, it's just like, well, why is this stuff happening? Like, why, we can go into a little bit more about, like, what happened down in Florida with that kid who did the shooting recently. And it's just like, well, people knew. The two schools before knew that he was mentally unstable. The FBI knew he was unstable, and it's just like, instead of blaming the things that they tried to do 20, 30 years ago, we need to really look at how, it's like, well, are these things really as bad as we say? Or is it the fact that there were people who failed that didn't do their jobs? There's clear problems.
Yeah, I mean, without us all going down this crazy rabbit hole in this interview, but I think ultimately the most important thing for me, and what I want to say about this particular element with Resident Evil and me not choosing to do it back then, is that I just believe that art is always one of the first things. And when I say art, I mean, it can be, a video game can be art, animation can be art, movies, paintings, music, all of it to me is an artistic expression, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I think when I do not believe in just censorship, just a generalized, cut a swath and say censorship when we don't understand. I hate that. I hate when I see people just write something off because it's easy to point a finger and blame it and say, you know what I mean? And I go, that does not get us anywhere. And in fact, games like Resident Evil, are art, movies that are, Quentin Tarantino movies that are ultra violent or sometimes, you know what I mean? They create a conversation. They actually what they end up doing is we go, okay, I can see a potential correlation between the art and some bad incident that happened. But now, rather than pointing fingers, let's discuss, let's debate, let's get to the bottom of what we're dealing with, rather than just trying to scapegoat, rather than just saying, let's blame that, and then we can go skipping along our merry way, and somehow that's going to magically solve the problem.
Right.
That's bullshit. That's absolute bullshit. Art creates that conversation, creates that space. It challenges. And it makes you know what I mean? And even sometimes when we don't understand it. And like I said, to bring this whole thing back, circle back around, I'm actually sad that I turned down the opportunity to continue to play Carlos, because now I look back and I go, I thought he actually was cool and I really enjoyed playing. There's so many reasons for that. But I'm also glad that happened to me early in my career.
Right, because you learned something about yourself.
It made me also question. Now, everything I get, not all the time. I can't say everything I get. You audition for things so much. But anything that has a political aspect to it, anything that has a deeper meaning to it, I automatically go ask myself these questions. What does it mean? Why am I doing it? What do I feel? You know what I mean? So that I'm prepared. Right. So I have a reason for what informs my art, informs my choices. And that doesn't mean that I've done stuff too to this day. I can look back at my career. I've chosen stuff where I've gone, I don't know that I fully agree with this, or I don't know how I feel about this, but I'm interested in taking it on because I like the idea of the conversation. I want the conversation to happen. And I believe that is important. I mean, it is our First Amendment, the freedom of speech, right? That is important. The only way that we get to the other side of anything in this world is by confronting it, is by talking about it, creating art about it, challenging it and getting. When we think that we can just push something down or stop it, and then somehow magically we're gonna cure it. That's bullshit. That's when we fail. That's when it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, exactly. Very well put.
Man, we got super heavy.
Yeah, we did. Well, no, but it was a very good topic. It was something that needed to be talked about. And I'm glad you brought it up and we were able to discuss it here because it highlights something that's very significant, not only then, but in today's world. And actually leads me into another topic here because, and this goes into one of our patron supporters, Proxy One, had asked this, and you looking back and saying that in the situation, you made a decision, and you're still stand by that decision. But if you ever had the chance, now would you go back and play Carlos again? I'm assuming that would be yes,
100%, 100%. And in fact, I many times I've dreamed about them suddenly going, oh yeah, we're going to bring them back, and then being reached out to and asking to come back. I would love to do it. I would do it in a heartbeat.
We haven't seen them since they flew off into the sunset in 3. I'm like, there's very few characters that's happened to that they've only had a quick one game and done type thing, and they survived. And we're just sitting here like, where can we bring him back in a movie or something? Not like a real one of the animated movies, or give us another game with him or something.
I mean, he might. I mean, he might get the chance in the future because technically, right now, for the last 2-3 years now, they've been remaking Resident Evil 2.
Yeah,
so. True. 3 could be a possibility because 3 did gain a lot of popularity back in the day. It didn't sell as much as Resident Evil 2, but the fan base for 3 and the fans itself, and I mean, it still sold really good. It was a great selling title for them, and over the years, people just come to love the characters from it. And people have always been asking, it's like, because the first one got remade back in I think 2001 for the GameCube, and then for years everyone's like, we're gonna get a remake. So 20 years later, we're finally getting that. So, I mean, I really hope they reach out for you.
Yeah,
well, listen, I still, like you guys, doing this podcast, and I still, when I go to conventions, I still constantly get fans, wanting my autograph. Like I'll go to Sailor Moon specific conventions, and I'll get fans who come up with pictures of Carlos or talking and like freaking out about it. And I'm like, wow, that's awesome. I would love it. I would love it. I would love to revisit that character. I mean, especially for me to be able to make amends, at least personally, to myself and say, yeah, I should have continued on in the series and closed them out. But I would love that. I mean, I would jump at the chance to play him again.
So the next part comes from one of our patron supporters, Kendo, from Kendo Gunshop. Says he loves your work as Carlos. Excellent job. He wants to know what parts of Carlos is you, basically. What similarities did you have with Carlos, and what part of you and your personality did you use to make him?
I always get similar questions that no matter what character, regardless of it being Resident Evil or Sailor Moon or whatever, people want to know that. I think ultimately when you start talking about that kind of stuff, I mean, there's a reason why you get a role. There's a reason why you're cast. Is clearly. Let's be honest. I didn't create Carlos. The people who made the game, who created the storyline, they created him, and they had a sense of what they wanted him to be. And when an actor books the role, typically it's because we brought something that embodied what they envisioned. So, to a certain extent, I think we're obviously incredibly similar because I played him. So I don't think they would have chosen me if there weren't elements of my personality, of who I am. If I didn't tap into those things in my audition, they wouldn't have chosen me. You know what I mean? Like, so I think there are incredible similarities between us in terms of swagger, in terms of, having a comical bent to when things get crazy, being impulsive, you know what I mean? Like, so I think there's a lot of those similarities. But that being said, I didn't create the character, right? Somebody else created it. And there's certain sensibilities that are in me that I just went, oh, I get that. Oh, right. As soon as I read it, I was like, oh, I know what's going on there. It makes sense to me. Like, because I feel, I have a certain similar sensibility. So,
okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So, yeah. So in general, I think we're probably, incredibly similar. The only thing I would say is I think he's obviously much more combat trained than I am. I don't know if there was a zombie apocalypse going on. I'm not really sure that I would be able to react the way he does. But
that's funny.
I'd like to think that I would keep my wits about me and make jokes in the heat of the moment. But
that kind of that's kind of what our last patron had asked. This comes from Bailey Ritter. If you were stuck in Raccoon City with Nemesis, what would you do?
Vince Corazza would probably curl up in a ball and cry. No, I have no idea. I mean, let's be honest, right? What an extreme situation. Yeah. All of a sudden, our world is, there's zombies. There's a crazy monster called Nemesis. I have no idea what I would do. I'd like to think, given similar circumstances, I would fight like hell, right? I mean, right. I think, I'd like to think that. I sort of suspect I would, because I'm one of those people that believes that if you've got no other choice, then that's what you have to do, right? And,
yeah.
I mean, in the moment you go, I'm going down, or I fight. It's one or the other, so might as well fight.
Yeah. It's like some people go to sleep at night and they wake up in the morning, the world's on fire. What do you do?
Right. What do you do? And some people they panic and they curl into a ball, and some people just go, okay, I better fight. Like, I got to do. Not today. If I'm gonna die, I might as well go down fighting. So I'd like to think that would happen, but I mean, I have no idea.
Yeah, just hope that never actually happens.
The first time I saw some undead thing coming at me wanting to eat me, I don't know if I was holding a gun, if I would stand and shoot, or if I would just be like, run away.
Well, it's been a good run. I'll just go ahead and wrap it up here.
I think I'd start to run away and get distance, then turn around and shoot. You know what I mean? That's probably the best of both worlds.
Awesome.
That's great.
So where can people follow you on social media? Are you Instagram, Twitter guy, Facebook guy?
Yeah, I have an Instagram account. I have a Twitter account at Vincent Corazza. Everything is Vincent Corazza. So
okay.
The only thing on Facebook, it's Vincent Corazza, the actor. I have a personal page that's right. Vincent Corazza. I don't typically, I don't actually at all friend people through my personal page. I keep that to my friends and family.
Right, obviously, yeah.
But Vincent Corazza, the actor, on Facebook, the more the merrier. I respond. I communicate. I love talking to fans, and on Twitter, on Instagram as well. My Instagram is my private account, but obviously Instagram, I don't block people and stuff like that. Anybody's allowed to follow me, just don't be a dick.
Yeah. We have a good fan base. I don't think you'll be getting much of that. So
yeah. I have to say, in the 25 years I've been an actor, I've only had maybe 2 people be jerks, and I say this with no regret whatsoever. If you're a jerk, you're blocked. That's it. You're done. I have no time for it. I don't care.
Yeah.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
No, ain't nobody got time for that, man. No way.
Awesome.
No way, man. I'm here for a good time, not a long time. So,
yeah, exactly.
I got no time to listen to somebody rain on my parade. But I'm always open to communicating with people and stuff like that. I love it. I only get to do what I do if people like what I do. So I appreciate anybody that likes my work and wants to communicate and reach out.
Right, of course.
Unfortunately, I am busy, so I don't always have, sometimes I've had people who send me messages and they go, a week later, I'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm just seeing this. And they'll be like, oh man, I thought you were being an asshole and you didn't respond. I was like, no, I'm busy, or I'm traveling, or, I'm working on something. But No, I try to always reply to anybody's message and communicate.
That's something that we as fans forget pretty often as well. When we reach out to an actor because we like their work and we want to say, hey, thank you, and we don't get a response, you immediately think, well, that person's just blowing me off. They, probably don't care, or you would assume that. Some people jump to that conclusion that they just don't care. But you have to remember that they're constantly working. They've got a lot of stuff. You're not the only person in existence that's going to message them that day either. Yeah. So,
well, and not just work. Remember, we're human beings too. We have lives. Like we get sick. We have family members that get like things happen. So it's not always. I mean, I've had that happen. I remember, my mom had brain surgery. She got an infection. And I remember, for a good 6 months, I was flying back and forth from New York to Toronto every weekend and stuff like that. So, there was a good 6 months where I was pretty much just non-existent on social media and with anything other than I would work, and then I'd be dealing with my family and my mother. And, and then about 6 months later, I remember finally, my mom was fine. Everything was okay. And then you suddenly go, okay, I need to get my own personal world back together. And then you suddenly start reaching out to people, and communicating stuff. And people are like, man, dude, I thought you just blew me off. And I'm like, nope, just busy. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think people do sometimes not realize that, and I will say my wife actually taught me that years ago. We've been together 21 years. When I first started out, I used to get embarrassed when people would reach out to me or like say nice things to me. And so I wasn't being a dick, but I would just kind of blow it off as sort of to say, oh, I'm nobody. My wife one time, we were walking down the street in Toronto and some fan stopped me to say they liked my work in something. And I kind of underplayed it. I was like, oh, no, I'm nobody, man. It's not, you know what I mean? And then the person walked away and I didn't realize it at the time, but they were clearly disappointed in the way I was. I wasn't being a dick. I was just kind of like, being humble and thinking, oh, I'm nobody. And my wife turned to me and said, you ruin it for them when you do that.
You're something to them. You're something very important to them.
Exactly. She said, you might not think that you're anyone special or whatever. She said, but it took them courage to walk up to you to say, hey, I like your work. And she said, the least you can do is just say thank you. And I was like, oh man. And it crushed me. Like I remember in that moment, I remember tearing up and going, oh my God, like that was not my intention. My wife, we were, at the time, she was like, I know that, babe. I know that's not what you were trying to do. She's like, but that's what ends up happening.
Yeah.
And so ever since then, I always try to be, kind to everybody, and it wasn't that I wasn't being kind. I just try to respond in a positive way. And also going back to that story I told in Vancouver, meeting that fan who Sailor Moon changed his life. It's stories like that just stay with me, that always makes me go, right. It's really important that we're all human beings just trying to figure out what's going on, like why we're here, what we're doing. You know what I mean? And so it doesn't matter what my job is or who I am or what I've accomplished. None of that matters. At the base level, we all have to wake up in the morning, eat something, brush our teeth. You know what I mean? We all have. Every single one of us goes to the bathroom. You know what I mean? Every single one of us has to sleep. Every single one of us has to breathe oxygen, and every single one of us feels things. And so it's super important to me to always try to be good to and kind to my fans, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, we're here at the Residents of Evil and Beyond the Fandom as well. Like we're kind of the same thing because like it took off. Like we were just doing this for fun because we wanted to do things for the fans and stuff that like nobody else was really doing at the time or had really tried to before. And we got like over 40,000 subscribers on YouTube and our Facebook channel, and everything was growing. And we were all like, wow, like people really like us, and people are contacting us on our Twitters. And so we're always responding to them. We're asking, it's like, all right, so what's the feedback? What do you guys really like? Be honest, everything. If you didn't like something, let us know. And at a convention that I went to, I did the photography at. One of the people is a huge fan of the Residents of Evil. And I knew her too, but it was the first time we had actually worked together. She did a damn near perfect, probably in my opinion, it was actually perfect. She makes a great Cindy from one of the newer Final Fantasy games. Mm-hmm, right. And she was like telling people, she goes, oh, I get to shoot with one of the guys who's a photographer. He works at the Residents of Evil. He's great. And it's just like, my whole life as a photographer and, doing all the things I've done, it's just getting praise like that and recognition. It trips you up a little. You're like, whoa, wait, this is a thing. People actually like me.
Yeah. Whenever you're new to it, yeah, it is always a bit. I mean, listen, if you're a decent human being that has a sense of the world, I think it shocks you. Like it is always. It's a hard thing to kind of learn, especially if you weren't brought up in it. I think like actors whose parents were actors prior or who grew up in that world, they tend to adjust better because they've seen it. They've seen their family, people. But like I didn't. My father's a carpenter. My mother was a stay-at-home mom, and important job too. And so I knew nothing about the world I was getting into. And so I remember the first time that started to happen. It's shocking. You think you're this humble person going, I'm nobody. Like I'm just trying to do my work, and what I mean. But it means something, and it's funny because my wife, one of the other things she said to me, which has always stayed with me, is she was like, well, if you did that to somebody, she said, imagine you met like one of your idols, like Denzel Washington or Robert De Niro or Meryl Streep or something, and you went up to them on the street and said, I'm such a big fan, and imagine they kind of acted like that. She said you wouldn't hate them, but you'd be disappointed. Right. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I would just love for them to say thank you. It was nice to meet you. What's your name? And and that would be good enough because that's all you're not expecting anything more. And she was like, and I was like, yeah, that's true. And so, anyways, long story longer. I just I try to be as communicative as possible with my fans. Like I said, as long as you're not a dick.
Yeah, just be respectful and understand.
That's perfect. Yeah,
understand that Vincent has a life as well. He's not being rude. Right. He'll get back to you, or at least hey, thanks. They appreciate it, I'm sure. So.
Yeah.
So are you working on anything now? Anything coming up that you want us to be looking out for?
A couple things in the work, but unfortunately, non-disclosure, right? Non-disclosure agreements. The whole new world of non-disclosure agreements. But I do all the promos for the Late Show with Stephen Colbert.
Oh, cool.
So that's kind of a daily gig. Which
you can hear Vince's voice every time you hear the promo for the Colbert Show.
Yeah, tonight on Colbert.
That's awesome.
So I do that every day, and that's a daily gig, which I absolutely love. I'm so proud of the show. I love being part of it, but unfortunately, the schedule is super constrictive. It's I have to record at least once during the day, and then I have to be available at night after they finish taping to record for the nighttime promos. And so unfortunately I can't do any.
I actually into a commitment.
I haven't been able to do any film or TV or any theater for basically 3 years now, which has been difficult creatively for me. But I can do voiceover stuff. So I'm still doing.
You can still take your gigs at home.
Yeah, exactly. I can still do, commercial things and all, and I still am. And like I said, there's a couple things that, that I can't actually talk about, but but unfortunately from a film, TV and theater, on camera and theater perspective, I haven't been able to do anything for almost 3 years now, which is hard, which is really hard. Cause I've always considered myself an actor that does everything, and unfortunately right now I just can't do any of it. But I'm also super proud to be part of the Late Show. I love the show, and I was a massive fan of Stephen Colbert before he took over for Letterman, and I'm a massive fan of the show now because my sensibilities, my values, my morals, the way I feel about the political landscape right now are incredibly similar to Stephen Colbert. So I'm very proud to be part of that show.
That's something that people, as fans, don't think of when they're thinking, okay, I haven't heard from this person in a while. There's an actor out there that he's significant to me for this reason, but what happened to him? Where did he go? Well, they have other projects or things that they've worked on. And in their situation, if they watch that network, they're hearing your voice all the time. They just never put it together.
Yeah, if somebody watches CBS, you're hearing me like multiple times a day. Unfortunately, other than that, you don't really hear me much.
Right.
I mean, the commercials here and there and things like that.
See, it crosses my mind when I'm in the car and I'm listening to the radio on the way home, and I'm hearing. I used to always want to mute the commercials, but since I've gotten into speaking with the talent behind voice acting and doing voiceover, and aspiring to do some of my own in the future, now I actually listen to them. And I'm like, I pick up on I hear how they recorded it. I listen to the inflections in their voice and how they present whatever it is they're talking about. And then I also was like, have I heard that voice before? Have I actually talked to that person? So
right.
It's a funny, it's just a little game I play now, I guess. Makes driving a little bit easier.
Right. Right. Yeah. When you get into this side of the industry, I mean, it's my wife always says that. My wife's an actress too, and she does VO and stuff like that. And it's funny how we always, going back to talking about like watching your own work and stuff.
Yeah.
When we watch TV, I mean, I can't tell you how many. Every single night it happens. We'll be just watching something, then randomly we'll hear a commercial and be like, "Oh, that's so and so." Oh, that's like instantly know it. And not even just celebrities, but friends of ours, or people we know, or what I mean. We'll all just be like, "Oh, right. Oh, that person got that gig. Oh, right on, excellent." You know what I mean? And not having a face, but knowing instantly because we're totally tuned into that world where we hear, you know what I mean? We pick up on those subtleties and those sort of, like, as I said earlier, the behind the scenes things that most people who are just sitting back enjoying, who want to just fast forward through the commercial or go get something to eat or go to the bathroom while the commercial's on. People like us, we actually sit and listen and we go, "Oh, okay, right. Oh, yeah, that's who that is." Or, "Oh, that's the person. That's how, how they went with that kind of voice instead of going with me. And, that's what I should have done." And,
right. I remember auditioning for that one and they went with this instead of that. And
yeah. And you go, and I didn't do anything wrong. It's just clearly I should have, they wanted it more serious. Yeah. They wanted it deeper, or, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
So it's work. We're always working.
That's something to the people who want to get into the industry. We get a lot of those questions too that people ask. How do I get into it? Are there any tips for beginners? And that's something I would recommend, is actually listen to those. Yeah, you want to get into the big projects. You want to be a character in a TV show. You want to be a character in a game. But a lot of the work comes from commercials and doing voiceovers for things like that. And that's how you can get started. So actually listen to those and listen to how they present them. And learn from it. Practice them.
That is my number one piece of advice that I always say whenever I'm asked that question at conventions, panels, interviews, or whatever, and people ask me, how do I get into it? The first thing I always say is pay attention. Pay attention to what is actually currently going on. And especially with so many people dismiss commercials and stuff because they want it. Because of course we all want to play the lead role in a video game or the lead role in an animated show, or we all want to play, be the lead on a TV series or in feature films. But the way you survive in this industry is, I mean, I was the voice of Dunkin' Donuts recently. I was the voice of Dunkin' Donuts for 4 years. I mean, that's one of the best paying gigs I've ever had in the 25 years I've been an actor. You know what I mean?
And it's a commercial for Dunkin' Donuts, but you're getting a regular paycheck from it that pays the bills.
Not just a regular paycheck, but a very good regular paycheck.
Very good regular paycheck.
As I said, I've done, I've done high profile gigs. I get invited to conventions for Sailor Moon, but the entire Sailor Moon recording, all of it put together, didn't even make up probably 6 months of me doing Dunkin' Donuts.
That's crazy.
So I say that to people. I'm like, pay attention. Do not fall asleep when, and don't just fast forward through that stuff. And when you hear something that's similar to you or similar to what you think you might do or what you like, listen to it, practice it, say it, you know what I mean? Like, and try to understand, why did that work? What is it about that works? That's how, that, because it's current. Somebody bought that. Like some producer, some director said, that's what I want. So you might not like it, but that's what sold. And you got it, you know what I mean? And if you're not paying attention, then you're missing out on an opportunity. That is my number one piece of advice to people who want to get into this business.
Yeah, and a lot of those guys that do these voiceovers, a lot of, not just guys, but the women involved, the whole industry, they're newer to it, or they've been doing it for a while, but it's not that you have to pick yourself up and go to an expensive studio down the road. A lot of these people are doing it in, their closet, in a small sound booth that they built. Whatever they modified to reduce the echo off the microphone, that's how they're doing this, and they're doing it from home, and they're just grinding it out every single day. They're hustling towards it. They're taking auditions, they're submitting auditions, and then getting the work. And then sometimes you land the Dunkin' Donuts, which becomes a 4-year gig for you that pays everything that you need. It allows you to do some other things too. Yeah,
absolutely. Listen, that is how you survive in this business, and there's no shame in that. Like, it's super important. I so often come up against that where people, and it's funny because especially with the commercials where I've been at conventions or I've spoken on panels or been asked those questions about how to get into it, and people always dismiss it too. Like when I bring up the commercial side of stuff or or narrating programs and stuff, it's grind work. It is grind work. You know what I mean? Because it's not the glamorous part of like playing Carlos in Resident Evil or playing, Tuxedo Mask or, being, or being the lead in a movie or, it's not as glamorous. But the truth is, that's how you survive. That is how you stay in the biz and how you continue to work. and then give yourself the chance to become a lead role and get to work, get to do something where you go, oh, okay. The amount of stuff that I've done in my career that has gone unnoticed, but yet pays my bills, far, far, far outweighs the few jobs that I've done where people go, oh, wow, I know you from that.
Yeah.
Those I can count on maybe two hands. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the thousands of jobs that I've done, thousands of jobs that I've done that nobody has a clue of. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
That allows me to wake up in the morning and pay my bills and survive. And also, I feel like it informs me as an artist. Doing those jobs, there's something that I still learn from them. There's something that I can bring to other performances by doing that work. Just by playing around and constantly being open and creative, and that's what being an artist is.
Yeah, definitely. So, you have any final thoughts, words for the fans? Resident Evil, Sailor Moon, anything you'd like to say to them?
I've probably talked everybody's ear off. Everybody's probably like, shut the F up, dude. What's up, man?
I think it's been great. This has been some interesting, deep conversation.
I know, huh? We really went there.
Yeah, we did.
Well, that's the one, like I said before about our show. Like, a lot of people really like it because, we get to know the actors on kind of like a personal level. We get to hear things, and generally everybody's accepting of it. And we just we tell jokes, we have fun, things run on a little bit longer and stuff, but people really enjoy it. We've had other guests where it's done that. I mean, we did Allison Court. We were running on like over 2 hours for that one.
Almost 3 with her. Yeah, and we just get lost in the conversation, which is nice.
I start my weekends especially. I start my weekends every single weekend with AM Joy, so on MSNBC. And this morning was a particularly amazing segment on there's some controversy with her right now and stuff. And I just thought that she took it on so brilliantly, and it has to do with LGBTQ, and so I was already ramped up and ready to go.
Yeah, let's talk. Let's get this.
Yeah, and anybody who knows me knows I'm pretty political. I'm pretty outspoken. I'm not a shrinking violet. I have opinions about a lot of things, but and I also think it's important, as I said earlier, I think it's important that we challenge and we talk and we debate and we don't shy away. We don't, don't just point fingers and get mad at each other. It's really, really super important, especially right now. We are in such a terrifying, sad, dark landscape right now of this, of where we're retreating into corners and huddling with our teams and saying, if you're not on my team, then you're bad.
Yeah.
If you don't agree with me, then you're wrong. If you don't agree, and that's such a dangerous thing for progress,
It really is. Well, it's like they've always said there's the taboo subjects that you don't talk about is politics and religion. But now in today's world, you need to talk about those things. You need to have, but the thing is, you can't go into them, like you said, walled off. And if you don't agree with me, you're on the wrong side and you're my enemy now. You need to be open to conversation, open to accepting somebody else's thoughts and opinions, and understanding. Just because they believe something different doesn't mean that they're completely wrong. Just they see it from a different angle. What do we have in common? Where's the bridge between us and them? Yeah.
Well, that's the scariest thing that I feel, and this, I don't want this to turn in, so let's not go down the rabbit hole. It's one of the scariest things I feel about the person who's at the top of the totem pole right now, who's running our country, is that, I don't care. I get that I'm not going to agree with everything that this particular administration wants to do and all that stuff. But the thing that terrifies me, the thing that is utterly terrifying to me right now, is this manipulation of facts and truth, and this inability to be able to, we're now challenging where this particular person is literally bold-faced lying to us on a daily basis, and then that becomes the truth. And that is terrifying to me. And, or attacking artists unless they agree with him. And again, I don't want this to turn into an attack on our president. But I'm not trying to attack him right now. What I'm trying to say is that particular element of it is terrifying to me. That is absolutely terrifying to me. We have never before or at least not in my lifetime, not in modern American history. We've never before just attacked people, artists and stuff in such a way where we then dismiss and say, if you don't agree with me, you are therefore wrong and bad and evil. And I feel that from both sides. Like, I feel like the left, the right, we all have to get away from this. Like, I'm right, you're wrong. I'm right, you're wrong. You know,
bingo,
yeah.
And I felt the same way with a lot of things, because I was like, look, I'm trying to tell you guys here, you can have your opinions and stuff. You may not like what this person says, but just respect. As long as we all the key word is respect. Like, because you're always going to have those people. Because, like, I got friends who are liberals, I got friends who are conservatives, I got all this stuff. And the best thing that we do is we make fun of each other, and in the good way. It's like, so you like the giant Cheeto, but you like this other person and stuff instead. It's like, we just make jokes. Because that's the thing. It's like, life's too short, everything, because everybody's like, oh, you got to pick a side. No, this isn't Civil War. Just be friends. Don't ruin the relationships, the friendships you've built for years over politics and stuff. Just remember that they may not agree with you on what you like, but that person's always been there for you as a friend when you need it. So don't be mean to them.
But in that respect too, it's also important to challenge, and that goes back to my, talking about what we've been talking about this entire time is the art, like video games, animation, all of it. And that is why, again, I always say to me, artists are the spine of our society in terms of being able to, and it's not always right or wrong. Again, it's the ability to have that freedom. That is what has made this country the greatest country of all time, is the ability to have the freedom, or at least was the greatest country for a while, to express. And not suddenly be completely, demonized, to be able to go, I don't know exactly what I was doing there. I'm trying to express something I'm feeling and seeing and hearing and thinking. And I'm trying to do it on an artistic level so that we can feel it. And then let's talk about it. Let's debate it. That is how we grow. If we just shy away from it, and like I said before, if we retreat into our corners and just go, this is how I feel, this is how I think, and that's that. We get nowhere. I am not the same person I am at 45 that I was at 25 when I said no to doing Carlos after the Columbine shooting. You know what I mean? Yeah. And if somebody suddenly found out about that and held that against me from 20 odd years ago, that would be wrong. I've evolved. You know what I mean? Like that, we have the ability to grow, and we have to give space for that. We have to not be afraid of it. We have to give ourselves space, but we have to do it in the one thing that is terrifying and so scary to me is this whole, like, the whole fabrication of what is a fact or what is truth, and what that is absolutely terrifying to me. Yeah, I've never seen anything like that in my lifetime.
It's definitely a whole new ball game.
That's the only thing. That is the only. I mean, that's the one thing that I absolutely, literally, keeps me up at night or wakes me up in terror sometimes. As I just go, how do we have a conversation if the two sides can't even agree upon, well, what is the actual fact right now? And then let's talk about what we'd like to do with it. You know what I mean? Like, this is the fact. And then now let's debate about how we feel about that fact. And let's debate about how we want to react to it and where we want to go and what we want to say and what we want to do. But we all agree that this is true. This really exists. And this is what it is. And right now that's being destroyed. That reality is being destroyed. And I go, oh my God, where do we go from there? Right. I mean, what's real and what's not? Right. That's terrifying. Woo! We got deep, man.
Well, like I said, we got a lot of fans who, they're very they enjoy this kind of stuff and they're respectful. So don't feel like it was great. I love it. I like a good talk. So that's good.
And I'm sure there's going to be some fans that are going to hate me for some of the things I just said in this interview. Right?
No, I don't think so. I think from what I've seen of our fan base, they're very open-minded, understanding. And they respect the talent, they respect the actors, they respect your opinions on everything. So I expect that this will be very well received.
Right on. Well,
it was awesome talking with you. I'm glad that we were able to do this, and just to sit and just to learn about you some more was really the best part of everything. So
that was cool. It was fun, man. And like I said, if your fans want to reach out to people and say to the people that created Resident Evil and say he'll come back and do it, right? I'd love to do it.
All right, guys, time to flood Capcom with some emails. Let's do it.
if you want to see Vincent at some conventions around you, make sure you blow up your conventions asking for him to be brought out. And which you have the one in Toronto coming up this summer, is that right?
Yes, I think it's Sailor Moon Celebration. Hang on, I have to check on what. Yeah, I think that's what it's called. Oops, that's terrible when I'm blanking on.
Hey, you said you got a busy schedule and stuff, so
that's true.
yeah.
So definitely keep an eye out for that and follow.
That's actually just in like Sailor Moon Celebration in Toronto. That's like literally in a month and a half or so, something like that.
Wow.
That's the next.
We have people up in the area that definitely listen. So if you guys are going to that, or if you want to meet Vincent, maybe just to go for Resident Evil purposes, go see him, get an autograph, talk to him, and let him know how you feel. Hopefully in a positive way.
No being a dick, people.
Yeah. No one punch me, please.
And if you want to see him come somewhere closer to you, make sure to hit up your conventions and ask to have him brought down as a guest. And again, thank you for talking with us. This is a long, great conversation. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, man, you guys, we got into it today.
Yeah,
that was fun. That was fun. That was really fun. Some really cool stuff. Yeah, you guys are great, man. I'm glad we did it. Thanks a lot for having me on.
Alright, that'll conclude our episode for today. I would like to thank Vince for taking the time to chat with us, and if you would like to follow him on social media, I'll leave all of his links down in the description. Make sure to check out part 2 of this podcast, where we discuss his role as Tuxedo Mask in Sailor Moon. That'll be on the Beyond the Fandom channel, which I'll link down below. If you enjoyed this episode of the ROE Podcast and are listening on YouTube, please leave a like, and if you would like more ROE Podcasts, definitely subscribe. If you're listening on iTunes, please leave us a review and subscribe to be notified when another episode is released. The Residents of Evil is a Patreon supported show, so if you'd like to help support the channel and unlock some other really cool perks in return, head over to patreon.com/ROE Network. I would like to give a special thank you to all of our patrons, starting with our sword key holders, Nisa Hall, Elizabeth Wellborn, Potatoes and Lead, Lexian, Miki, Damon Ian, Ernesto Malave, Kellyanne Fox, Petros Lueno, Peter Pickler, Charlie Robinson, Jeff Marcotte, Sarah Baxter, Whitney Niles, Amy Adams, Vil Kiss, Corey Mercuyer, May Naigian, Michael McLowan, Warrior. Moving on to our armor key holders, Kaylin Zielinski, Kuhn Cannon, The Original Fanass, Robert Kotowaski, Digital Purgatory, Mike Wood, Marcos Dos Diaz, Brian Salazar, Dimitrik Powell, Bryce Ray Parker, JC Wesker, Yazjin, Lurwin, Tyler Seth Parsley. Next up is our shield key holders, Edward Galodi, Vincent Meher, Scott Pogamiller, DGC Gangan, Curse Toast, Charlie April, Riley Claypool, Scott Yanos, Shane Woolwine, Kungmin Yang, RJ Mitchell. And next up is our helmet key holders, Chris Arnott, John Klein, Ryan Say, Latriel Havens, Musical Lumberjack, Stuart Barclay, Resident Elect, Ahmed Al-Khatib, Thomas McGarry, Tom, Luke Davis, Content on Demand, Leon2394, Bailey Ritter, Liam Davis, Umbrella Corporation, Thomas Owen, and Steve Jacobson. And lastly, our Masters of Unlocking. This is our highest tier level members, Chandler Mitchell, Mike Frassetti, Dustin Lewis, Kendall Gunshop, Santiago Alcantara, Trent Overton, and Proxy One. Thank you guys all so much, and if I butchered your name, I apologize. As always, thanks for watching, and we hope to see you back at the Residents of Evil.